Hey everybody, it's Ron and Ellie back for another edition of Ask Ron. First up this week is Jermon Claiborne in Georgia.
Hey, Jermon.
Jermon says, I found a for sale by owner ad for a nice little home in Arkansas, but I can't find any recent comps to support their asking price. The details on the house are the asking is $75,000, they owe $57,000, and PITI is $415 with a tenant currently in the house open to a lease purchase. What do you recommend I do?
Well, first I'm wondering why you're looking at a house in Arkansas if you're in Georgia. So that would be the first thing I want to know. Who's going to handle this house if you do it from afar? But with those numbers, honestly, I'd just take over his debt. You didn't tell me really what his asking price is, but if he'll sell for what he owes, it's a $415 a month payment. That's really, really cheap.
The asking price was $75,000.
Okay, well, if he's asking 75 and you can't find any comps to support the 75, then I probably wouldn't mess with it. But the truth is, it's more about if it's for out of your city than it is the numbers. If he's asking 75 and it's worth 75 and he'll do a lease option on it, you can always do an axe deal on it. But is it even worth messing with would be my first question.
Okay, next up is Martin Bale in Idaho.
Hey, Martin.
Martin says, with the new terms program, should we use the lease option agreement without the table of contents with the seller initially and the one with the table of contents with the buyer and then sign the one with the table of contents back to the seller? Is that how it works?
That's how it works.
Perfect. Next up is Brian Davis in Florida. Brian says, I've got a property that's stalling out. Long story short, I filed a memorandum of agreement at the courthouse and the sellers want me to release it for a new buyer they found with a realtor. I said I would as soon as they pay me the deposit for the assignment contract, $5,700. It's been 3 months since without a word from them, and do you think there's anything else I should do or just let the situation ride out?
I can't answer that because you haven't given me enough detail here. If you recorded that memorandum, whose fault was it didn't close? If it's your fault, then you better not be trying to extort money out of them, or you're just going to get in trouble. If, on the other hand, the seller backed out of the deal after you had a written binding contract on it, then that's a different story. So without more information, I can't answer your question, and it sounds like it's one more for your attorney than me anyway.
Okay, next up is our favorite Californian, Marianne Nunez.
Hey, Marianne.
She's got 2 questions for you. Says, I have been told by a real estate agent that if a home that a person owns ends up having to do a short sale or request a deed in lieu of foreclosure, the owner can put a tenant in the property on a month-to-month basis and keep the rent because it's the owner's property until the bank accepts. Is that legal? And if so, what would you tell the tenants?
That's legal for the owners, Marianne. It's not legal for you to take the property subject to and then rent it out and not make the payment. That's called equity skimming. The owner can do anything they want to do. It's their name on the note. And I would tell, if you put a tenant in there, that's entirely up to the seller what they tell the tenant. However, if you put a tenant in there with the option to buy, then you better fully disclose what the situation is, or that tenant is likely going to come back and have a case against the seller.
Okay, next up is Ronald Hecker in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Ronald.
He says, are there any special rules or things to consider when doing deals in Pennsylvania?
There's always special rules when doing deals in every state, Ronald. I do know that Pennsylvania requires you to record the memorandum of option on option deals. Other than that, that would be up for you to determine with a local real estate attorney, because I am not your attorney and I wouldn't know what the rules were in every state if I were your attorney. So go find an attorney and see if there's anything that you need to know about Pennsylvania from that attorney. There are no shortcuts to that.
Last up this week is Joyce Sells from North Carolina.
Hey, Joyce.
She says, I turned down a potential buyer today after seeing red flags on his credit report. What do you look for as qualifiers in a rent-to-own buyer?
Well, it might have helped if you'd have told me what red flags mean. I have no idea what that means. What I look for is actually in my course, in my new terms course, my old control of that ownership course, in my green course, and in my boot camp. So it's all part of my training. And I'm looking for, number one, do they have enough money to satisfy me for a down payment or an option deposit? Number two, do they make enough money to support the monthly rent that I'm going to try to charge them? And then number three, is there anything else that disturbs me? Like we do a Megan's Law report to find out if they've been convicted of child abuse. And in fact, you really should just go to screenthetenant.com and get Paul Ritter to pull a whole package of reports for you for $50, and that'll give you the information you need. But honestly, most people that we put in houses have weak credit. I mean, that is why they come to us to begin with. So unless you can tell me what you mean by red flag, it's hard for me to comment.
Well, thank you, Ron. That's all the questions we have for you this week.
All right. See, hey, before you go, there's a video here posted somewhere about the Seattle Salmon Summit. Go ahead and watch that video, and please note who won the Seattle Salmon Summit. And incidentally, you know that I recorded the new terms course here a couple weekends ago. That will be released to the public on January the 6th, so be looking out for that. I'm going to be delivering you some content from that over the next month or so, and it'll be available for purchase on January the 6th. So with that said, I'll see you next week, and I hope you didn't eat too much yesterday. I know you did. Never mind. See you next week.